Greetings and salutations, fellow masters. The end of the year is finally here. And with that, it's time for the guaranteed 5-star summon. Now, for those of you who are new to the game, or aren't aware of it somehow, the guaranteed 5-star summon is basically you pay 15 paid Saint Quartz, which is around $11 to $15, I want to say, and you will have a number of pools to choose from for your guaranteed 5-star with one multi. Now, you only get to roll this banner once, so make sure you choose your banner carefully. Now first, I want to preface this by saying you should roll mainly for what characters you love the most. Far more value is in the love for your servants than the power they provide. But for those of you who are here just to know how good each servant can be in each of these choices, I'm here to help you with that, as a veteran who's played this game for over 5 years now. I want to start this first by saying I do not have every single servant listed here. However, I have played the game long enough to be able to tell the value of a servant's kit, even if I myself do not own them. You may see me go into greater detail for the servants I do have though, and the ones I do have will probably get my higher recommendation compared to servants I don't have. But again, this is choosing from a pool of servants, so you're not even guaranteed to get that servant. It's like a 1 in 8 chance. First off, we have the red 3 Knights 1 banners, which has Ibuki Doji, Okita, Void Shiki, Squirtoria, Ishtar, Ereshkigal, and Brynhildr. Now, from what I have heard, Ibuki Doji is one of the most powerful AoE buster servants, and especially when she gets Vich next year, she will become one of the best farmers. Now, she doesn't deal as much damage as Artoria does, but she makes up for that in having a 50% NP charge, as well as being able to ignore invincibility. Okita has been around for a while, and her kit hasn't aged quite as well, but she's still a very good, quick crit DPS servant. Void Shiki before was not that good due to the instant death on her NP, making her really bad for 3-turn farming, but now she's more so good for challenge quests, as her Noble Phantasm removes debuffs for the party, and that's a very rare thing to have. Squirtoria is considered one of the best single-target archers in the game when it comes to arts. Now, would I use her over my level 100 Chloe? I don't know, but I still love Squirtoria. She's a great character, and she definitely deserves to be gotten. Ishtar, I'm going to remove my personal bias for a moment in the fact that she hasn't answered my summons in over 4 years. I'm not bitter at all. But I will tell you that especially when Vich comes out, she becomes one of the best buster AoE loopers, and it helps that she has a 50% NP charge, and her NP deals quite a bit of damage. Ereshkigal is quite an interesting case. She's not the highest damage dealer in terms of AoE for now, until she gets her NP interlude or rank up. However, she can really keep your team alive with the number of times she can provide defensive buffs to the team in combination with one of her skills and her NP. She's definitely a very fun character to use. Brynhildr is a bit of an interesting case, as she's not exactly a fantastic servant on her own, but she does do a number of things, such as giving an ally incredible crit star absorption for 3 turns, and she can also be a decent single target buster unit. Honestly, when it comes to the 3 Knights 1 banner, if I were to give this a letter grade, I would honestly give it a solid A in terms of both the usefulness for newer masters as well as more veteran masters, because a number of these servants can really pull you through the game and help you with farming later on. On to the red 3 Knights 2 banners. Umu Bride. There is quite a bit to say about this one, as she can be a decent support with her heal, attack buffs, and NP gain buffs, and she can even be your art's single target saber DPS if you need her to be. However, if you do happen to have your own Castoria, then Bride Nero ends up becoming one of the best partner units you can use with her for 3-turn farming. I'm not kidding, it's because of her I was actually able to 3-turn farm the previous 90+ node in the Christmas lottery. Do not underestimate this Nero. She is one of the most valuable in the game, whether or not you have Castoria or not. Benny Enma is a nice little side grade compared to Bride Nero, in the fact that she can offer your party some emergency evasion, and she also has some decent team utility, and she can deal some pretty good single target damage on her own. Saber Musashi is often considered one of the best single target busters in the game. She has an ignore invincibility skill, her NP gain because of her first skill is fantastic, and all around, you can't go wrong with her. John Archer is considered one of the very best AoE arts farmers in the games when it comes to archers. She has a very good NP gain skill, a nice little charisma for basically everyone, and a little bit of extra damage for good allies, and she can increase her NP damage, and every time she uses her NP, you get 3 turns of crit star buffs. Nothing wrong with that. Sei Shonagan. She's a bit of an interesting case because her AoE quick NP would have you assume that she's a quick AoE farmer. And she's not. She's actually a bit of a hybrid quick crit DPS, as well as a supporter that heals your team and charges their NP. She's a bit of a wild card, but, you know, that actually suits her personality. Shisho. A very interesting case, this one, because her NP gain on its own, it's not good in the slightest, unfortunately. Her being a year 1 servant has not done her any favors, but she's had a few upgrades, and she still deals very high NP damage. So if you get her, congrats, you'll have a very powerful single target quick DPS. Summer Tamamo Lancer. Ah, my sweet, sweet Tamamo, who I actually don't use that often. I really should fix that. Anyway, she has a number of good skills, especially her 3rd skill, which applies invincibility to herself as well as a number of debuffs. Well, 1 debuff, which is to basically stun her the next turn. However, if you give her a command code which removes said delayed debuff, it's really not an issue. She is one of the best to bring against male archers. So if you want to kick Emiya in the dick, she's the one for you. Overall, I would say this banner is not quite as good as the first one, so I would give it a solid B. Now, this banner, the 4 Cavalry Red 1 banner, this, let me tell you right now, this is the Holy Grail if you don't have any of these servants. Because the vast majority of them, yeah, they'll definitely change your account. Let's start with Da Vinci Rider. Easily one of the best AoE arts farmers in the entire game. If you set her up right, you can literally just mow down mobs of enemies in just setting things up the first turn, and you may not even have to press a button after that. If you've got double Castoria, that is. But even if you don't, she still deals pretty good damage. Castoria. Okay, let me make this quick and simple for you. She is the best support servant in the entire game. A 30 NP charge across the board and charisma, NP gain, as well as NP charge, arts buff, invincibility, and her Noble Phantasm gives you an unblockable shield, pretty much. And with overcharge, it takes a number of more hits. Not to mention, it removes debuffs, which, let me tell you, that's invaluable. If you do not have Castoria, I would highly suggest rolling on this banner. She is that valuable, and she will change your account. Whether you're an arts person or not, she is the best support servant in the entire game, bar none. Prisma Ilya, the one that made me renew my faith in FGO years ago when you came to me at NP2. I cannot sing your praises high enough, because when it comes to single target buster DPSs, not even just casters, but DPSs as a whole, I haven't seen many output nearly as much damage as Ilyasville. I'm not kidding. She busts out an astronomical amount of damage if you give her the right supports, or hell, even by herself. Now, her one major demerit is her Noble Phantasm does weaken her stats for a few turns, but thankfully with her interlude, she also gets an NP gain up for that. And not to mention, later this year, her second skill, which was just invincibility and NP gain up, is going to also turn into a 50% NP charger. You know, looking back at it, Ilya's treatment is kind of what Iskandar should have got. Huh. Funny that. Anyway, Ilya, yeah, she's amazing when it comes to single target buster DPSs, and you can't go wrong with her. Coma. Oh, there are so many things I could say about you. So I will. Let's start with the fact that, in my opinion, she is the best single-target assassin in the entire game, even surpassing Gramps. Now, I know that's a hard statement to make, but she can easily back it up with her skills and Noble Phantasm. For one thing, she has a permanent guts, as well as a attack up with one of her skills. Let me repeat that. Permanent guts. It doesn't have a cooldown, so you can always rely on it to revive you. Secondly, she has a 50% NP charge, which not only increases charm debuffing, it also makes her super effective against alter egos. And she's basically the only assassin that can do that. However, she's not done there. Oh no. Because her first skill is what made her survive the Scotty meta going from the Castoria meta. It not only heals you, and it's targetable, but it increases NP overcharge, which means you could use it on yourself to increase Coma's quick buff with her Noble Phantasm. Or you could use it on Castoria and get an extra hit of pure invulnerability for an extra 3 turns. I can't overstate how good that is. It makes it where she doesn't need Scotty to survive, unlike most other quick DPSs. Not to mention, her Noble Phantasm deals quite a heavy amount of damage and has a very good chance to charm lock you. And her NP gain on its own is nothing to scoff at if you have everything set up. I literally have had times where I have charm locked the enemy and done her NP 3 or 4 times in a row. It's ridiculous. And she's easily able to survive as a last stand against a boss. Do not underestimate this little, mid, or big assassin. Hey, you can choose whichever ascension you want. You want Lolly, you want Teen, you want MILF, that's all up to you. Coma, absolutely. Best assassin. Let's move on. Murasaki is a bit of an interesting case, because when it comes to arts caster farmers, Sieg, which you get from the Apocrypha event if you've been playing since then, actually does way better than her when it comes to just arts farming. However, when it comes to challenge quests, the amount of team utility and debuffs she applies to the enemy is very unique. I do not have her myself, but if you do get her, you'll be able to use her in a number of interesting situations. Semiramis is a bit of an oddball, as she can be a Buster debuff supporter or a Buster AoE DPS. I've never really known what to make of her, even though I have her myself, so she's a bit of an odd pick if you get her, and I'd say she's probably the weakest of what you can get here, but she's still very much usable. MHX is another servant I do not have, but from what I have heard, she is one of the highest damage DPSs when it comes to single target assassins. And she has a number of buffs that actually make her a really good character. So if you get her, unlike when she first released, you're actually getting a pretty good servant. Musashi Berserker, one of the best AoE arts loopers in the game for farming. If you get her, you will make your farming life so much easier. But not only that, because she's compatible with Castoria, she's also really good for challenge quests, as long as you can keep her alive, because one single crit will end her career just like that. Like I said, if you have none of these servants here, and you are going for pure meta or power, this is the holy grail of the guaranteed SSR to roll for. This easily gets an S rank compared to every other banner here, and gets my highest recommendation for what you should go for. Though, I won't be going for it because I have most of these. What can I say? I've been playing this game for a long time. Moving on. This next lineup of servants is quite interesting. The Red 4 Cavalry 2, as it's labeled. Maid Alter. Oh, this is going to hurt, but She, along with Iskandar, is not that good of a 5-star rider, but at least one thing she has over Iskandar is she has a targetable cooldown. So she actually has synergy with Tamamo, of all characters, and her NP, if you set it up just right, can actually do some pretty good damage. But she's only a little bit better than Iskandar. Oh, she needs so many upgrades. Moving on to Reigns herself. She's basically a more defense-oriented waiver, where instead of her Noble Phantasm reducing the enemy charge and heavily debuffing them, it reduces their crit rate and takes away any class advantage against your own servants, meaning your berserkers will actually be safe and just take normal damage. So she's actually incredibly invaluable for berserker teams. Scotty. She's the savior of Quick and the reason so many Quick servants are as strong as they are. If you get her, congratulations. Welcome to the Quick meta. Summer Umu. A very, very powerful AoE Buster DPS. She ignores class advantage for 3 turns when it comes to her own defenses, and she can apply a Guts to herself or her allies. And her NP ignores invincibility, so she's actually really good for challenge quests. Da Vinci. Another case of being a year 1 or year 2 servant. Her NP is arts, but it only deals 1 hit, so it's not exactly good for looping, but if you have a Waver and 2 Castorias, she can get the job done. I guess she'd be pretty decent for challenge quests. Cleopatra is a bit of an interesting case, because she's not very good for looping or farming, but all around, she is a very powerful AoE DPS assassin servant. She has a very good heal for her abilities. She has really good NP gain, as well as an NP charge, and automatic NP gain per turn with one of her skills, and she deals pretty good damage. So honestly, you may find some use for Cleo. If I got her, I wouldn't have much use for her, but she's actually pretty good. She's all around a good servant. Shuten Doji is a bit of another interesting case because her first skill focuses on attack, charisma, as well as charming the enemy. She recently just got an NP charge with her Guts. And her Noble Phantasm deals a crap load of debuffs, though it only deals 1 hit AoE arts, so not the best for looping, but it can be done. But if you do have Tamamo, you could actually do some synergy with her in being able to spam those debuffs to heavily weaken your enemy. So you could do some fun things with Shuten. She's not amazing, but she'd be really fun to play around with. MHX Alter is a berserker, but she dies pretty fast despite her HP recovery buffs. HP recovery buffs isn't going to mean much if you die in 1 crit hit. But she does make up for it in her ridiculous crit damage, not to mention having her own Star Bomb attached to her skill, and her Noble Phantasm deals some pretty heavy damage as well. So she'll be good for challenge quests and trying to take out bosses as fast as you can. Definitely recommend her. Mommy Raiko is not as strong as she used to be when she first came out, but she's still a very powerful crit berserker. Her first skill allows her to crit star, absorb, as well as increase crit damage, which is already dealing a ridiculous amount. She has a bit of survivability with her evade, and her third skill lets her deal amazing damage to mystic and demonic enemies, of which there are a lot. And her Noble Phantasm is AoE and allows her to drop a whole bunch of crit stars for your team. If you pair her up with Reigns or a double Merlin setup, you can absolutely wreck some shit. So she is definitely very strong. Not as strong as she used to be, and you definitely won't be using her for loop farming, but when you need a strong berserker, she's definitely got your back. Overall, I would say this whole section of servants here is a bit of a mixed bag. You've got really good ones like Scotty, Reigns, and Raiko, but you've also got some awkward ones like Cleo, Shuten, and Maid Alter. So again, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and I'd probably give this pair of servants a C+ in terms of overall value for all of them. Now, this next group of servants I would consider to be a little more on the advanced end in terms of how you use them. Starting with Himiko, she's basically a more offensive Merlin, sacrificing a lot of survivability for incredibly high buster crit damage, not only for herself, but your team. She can deal ridiculous amounts of damage if you set her up right. Avenger Space Ishtar is probably the simplest one to explain here, because she's basically the single most valuable farming servant in the game, because she's the only one that can change her NP to any of the types you wish. Buster, Arts, Quick, whatever you want, she can do it. She's got a good charisma, a 50% NP charge, and a NP buff. So that definitely helps her. And honestly, there's a lot of competition between her and the upcoming Muramasa. But just know that Space Ishtar is also getting a raid up this very month, so keep that in mind. King Protea is a bit of a complicated one to explain because it relies on her unique buff stacking when it comes to her HP. It's really hard to describe her in a summary, but basically lots of HP, can sacrifice it for big NP damage. She's a very fun servant to use. Melt is one of the best single target alter egos in the game for sure. And once you have all of her skills at level 10, she becomes a fantastic last stand character to use. It'll produce a lot of crit stars as well as really good NP gain for herself. Absolutely a win if you get her. BB Summer, another interesting servant and one of the stronger servants because she actually has the ability to freeze your hand for 3 turns, as long as, of course, no one dies or swaps out. And also, while it's frozen in place, she's basically able to do the equivalent of a fragment of 2030 and give you 10 crit stars per turn during all that. So she has no problem gifting out crit stars. But she can also be the DPS if you want, due to her crit star and crit damage up skill. And she also has decent utility with her AoE NP and draining the enemy's NP gauge. So she's a very versatile servant. I would say she's a jack of all trades, but it's more that she's very good at everything she does. Not the best, but very, very good all around. She can serve multiple roles, and she'll definitely help you in your Chaldea. Abigail is another interesting case, because her Noble Phantasm is what makes her. It removes all buffs from the enemies before hitting, so there's no way to avoid it. Yes, it can even go through Castoria's invulnerability. I actually forget what the name for it is, but yeah. However, she's actually, in my experience, better used as a team player for 3-turn farming. That's what I've always done, is use her first skill to give a little bit of NP damage buff, as well as 10 NP gauge per turn to your allies. You can really do some crazy stuff with that, and I kid you not, it's because of her exactly that I was able to 3-turn farm with Zerkerlot for so many years without a max limit broken K-scope. So I owe a lot to her for that. But in terms of a main DPS, she does a little bit of team utility in terms of challenge quests, but again, her best asset is definitely her Noble Phantasm removing buffs. Honestly, running her in a Tamamo and Merlin team, I find always was the best for her. Regrettably, I cannot say the same in terms of versatility for Summer Abigail. Her best quality about her is her AoE Buster NP, which removes all defensive buffs from the very start before it hits. However, her NP gain is still a bit of an issue, just like her previous counterpart. Her NP charge does help with that, but her other skills just don't do that much for her, and kinda makes her feel like a bit of a year 1 servant, other than having an NP charge and the sleep debuff, because once her debuffs are inactive, she's not going to be doing that much for you. Now, that is entirely different from, and forgive me if I murder this name, Wang Guofei or Yang Guofei. I don't know how to say her name, but from what I have heard from my friend Noir, she is one of the single most powerful single target foreigners in the game. And if you give her command codes which inflict burn on the enemy, her value skyrockets. And if you just so happen to have this year's 5-star Summer CE from the gacha, and if it's limit broken, she becomes absolutely busted in every regard. So if you get her, it's definitely a win for you. All it takes is some burn command codes on her, and she'll tear through everything. Overall, I want to give this a B- as well, because this is more useful for advanced players rather than players starting out, because it involves quite a bit of advanced thinking on how to use some of these servants. This next group of servants, Red Extra 2, I would consider to be a little on the weaker end of selection pools for the guaranteed SSR. Bunny Artoria has a very unique niche, and she can do something amazing in combination with her card shuffle and BB's time lock skill. But other than that, she doesn't see that much use. Burned French Toast is still one of the strongest DPS crit Avengers in the game, and her NP actually now has buff block, so she's actually really good for both regular use and challenge quest. Avenger Nobunaga. Unfortunately, she's also one of the worst 5 stars in the game. I don't really know how to describe her kit for you. I would have to do an in-depth analysis of that. But at least you get 3 different forms per ascension. So there's that. Majin Okita Alter is actually a pretty powerful AoE alter ego, though I would argue that the next alter ego is better. Kiara, with all of her vast upgrades, has become quite the force to be reckoned with, and I'm not just saying that because I ever grailed to level 100. She's able to remove buffs, has a powerful NP charge, a very rare arts resistance down, and the amount of healing she gets from her NP now is ridiculous. And she's actually really good for farming now, ever since she got her NP upgrade. Summer Kiara, however, I would need to go into an in-depth analysis of her, but if you want my general thoughts on her, I think she is a great balance between being defensive, offensive, and offering good team utility. And I would definitely say if you end up getting her at NP1 or NP2, she can serve as one of your most powerful farmers as well. But you definitely need double Castoria and perhaps Bride Umu to make it work. One of these days I'll go into a very in-depth analysis of her, as, well, I have her at NP5, and I definitely want to show how great she is. Van Gogh is one I just recently got, and she requires a bit of thinking to get working consistently, but once you have her working, she will be dealing out crit numbers you didn't think possible. It's ridiculous how much you can do on her with just 20-30 on her. And fun fact, one of her best partners is in fact herself. So double Van Gogh meta? Yeah, that is actually a thing. Hokusai was a servant that really did well when she first launched, as one of the first AoE arts foreigners, but now she's fallen a little by the wayside. She's not bad, but she definitely could be better. Overall, I would have to give this this rating of a servant pool, I would have to give it a C. There are some incredibly powerful servants in here, but there are also some that really won't help you that much unless you really know what you're doing with them. This next bundle of servants is going to be male-focused for the last parts of the video. Starting with White 3 Knights, I would argue this is also one of the weaker selections to choose from, but it also has 2 amazing characters in it, as well as a really great one. Arthur Pendragon is similar to his Artoria and Mordred counterparts, but I would argue weaker in the fact that those 2 now have their own crit buffs, which is originally what Arthur Pendragon did to stand out, but now without that, he's actually weaker than the other Artoria and Mordred faces that you can get spooked by. So it's not exactly a good thing if you pull him if you already have those 2. If you don't have those 2 already, then you can still make him work. Saber Astolfo is unfortunately not that good right now, but once we get Ruler Scotty in the introduction of a new type of Brave Chain, introduced into the game where you use Buster Arts Quick in one hand, Astolfo's attack power will basically go up a significant amount. But right now, his mixed deck really does not help him that much. You can still make him work, but his potential is definitely locked into the future. Sigurd can produce immense amounts of crit damage that would make you blush. But the main problem with that is he's going to need someone to generate those stars for him. He does have a skill that increases the crit star generation rate of an ally, but it's only for one turn. He feels like he would have been better in the earlier days before break bars. Gilgamesh is still considered one of the most powerful AoE archers due to Enma Elish basically being super effective against everything. Oh, and as I'm speaking this, he just got a buff to his charisma skill, which deals extra NP damage to those affected by Enma Elish, so that's a massive boost for him. His crit star gather rate is also an NP charge, so he actually does have synergy with Tomovich in the future. And his NP generation rate skill is still something to be feared. If you get Gilgamesh, he'll absolutely crush a lot of the competition in your way. James Moriarty is a bit of an interesting case because he has a lot going on in his kit, but it doesn't do all that amazing things. Honestly, there are some 4-star archers I would pick before I would pick James Moriarty, but he can do some interesting things with his buff to evil allies. Super Orion. I'm not going to go into too hard depth of it, but if you raise him, congratulations, he will steam through most of the game. Doesn't matter if you have a Merlin to back him up, he is able to destroy things all on his own. You can even bring him against Lancers, and he will most likely still win. So, Super Orion, yeah, one of the most powerful servants in the game. He doesn't need anyone else but himself. Romulus is one I have not really looked into, but from what I've seen of his kit, he is heavily crit damage focused and focused on applying Roman traits to both your allies to buff them and their crit damage, as well as applying Roman trait to enemies to make them take even more damage. So from what I've heard, he is a very powerful Lancer. Overall, I can't exactly recommend this one. I'd probably give it a C- for the choice of servants here. You have Gilgamesh and Super Orion to really bring it up, but the others, in my opinion, just really bring it down, almost to a D rank. I definitely would not choose this one unless you really, really want one of these servants specifically. This next selection of servants is also a very high quality mixed bag with only a few lows. The White 4 Cavalry includes Yvonne, who is a very powerful AoE Buster rider, who actually just got buffed in JP recently, so he actually just got even better. If you get him, he will definitely do well as a Buster AoE rider. Iskandar is one of the worst 5-stars in the game, and that hurts me to say because I have mine at Bond 10, but I made an entire video about him, so if you really want to know the details of that, go watch that video. But Iskandar he's not that good. Merlin, on the other hand, does not see as much use as he used to in the meta, but don't let that mistake you for a second. He is absolutely a top tier support, applying all manner of buffs, including invincibility for a turn, able to buff your entire team's NP gauge and give them some charisma. Not to mention the amount of buster potential he brings. And, oh man, I don't even know where to start with his NP. Healing, crit star rate, NP generation. You may not use Merlin for farming, but in terms of challenge quests and challenging content in general, he will definitely pull his weight. King Hassan. Oh boy, this is still, to this day, one of the most powerful Last Stand characters in the game, to the point that he's really never let me down, and I actually had him completely soloing the previous Grail front. He is an absolute monster once you raise all his skills and can just wipe the floor with everything. If you get him, congratulations. You have a incredibly powerful Last Stand character. Arjuna Alter. I hate him, but I can't deny he's one of the most powerful berserkers in the game, dealing ridiculous damage. So if you get him, congrats. He will boost your account immensely. But still, I hate him. Screw him. Kintoki Berserker. Very, very simplistic, but very effective. One of the few berserkers to have a 50% NP charge, and he can actually apply a chance to stun the enemy with his NP. Very, very powerful. Isn't used as much, but still, it's an absolute win if you get him. I don't know what to make of the next berserker. In fact, I kind of forgot his name, so I'll just call him Shinsen Gemida. But his kit revolves around having his HP be as low as possible for his NP to deal even more damage. And for a berserker, that's a pretty risky playstyle, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. Honestly, I would not use him myself, but if you do get him, you can definitely make him work. When it comes to this selection of servants, the only one I would really say is a loss is if you get Iskandar. The other servants here are all really high quality and will definitely boost your account. I would probably give this one an A rating. And finally, we come to the last selection of servants, White Extra, which honestly I would say doesn't really have any weak servants here. They all provide very powerful niches, starting with the best villain in terms of the animes I've seen, at least from the Fate franchise, Kotomine Shiro, who, when he first released, was not that good, but now he can consistently provide crit stars for the team, increase his NP gauge quite a number of times actually, has a very powerful stun, and most importantly, his NP ignores all buffs before it even hits. So there is no way to avoid the damage that his NP will cause, making him an incredibly useful servant for challenge quests. I'd argue one of the most powerful rulers in the game. And speaking of one of the most powerful rulers in the game, I don't even know where to start with this Chinese emperor, but let's just say if you get him, he will be able to solo a number of challenge quests all on his own. Seriously, it's ridiculous how strong he is. If you end up getting this Chinese emperor, congratulations, you just increased the power of your account tremendously. Sherlock Holmes is one you would definitely want to use for challenge quests, because he has a lot of team utility, such as skill seal, generating crit stars, as well as the fact that his NP basically ignores invincibility and ignores any defensive buffs, and it applies to your entire party, letting them go ham on the enemy. They are incredibly powerful and definitely a very strong asset to your team. Edmund Dantes, aka Eiji Nagito from Danganronpa, is one of the best quick loopers in the game, especially if you have him at NP2. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen people be able to trivialize some farming with Edmund Dantes. He's not as good as he used to be, but he's definitely still one that will increase the power of your quick focus teams. Domon is a bit of an interesting case, because his first skill applies a number of debuffs, and his second and third skill help increase the power of your evil, chaotic allies in terms of critical damage. Like, if you've got a bunch of chaotic, evil servants, he will absolutely be a major boost to them. However, one major detriment to him is how long of cooldown his skills have. So he's definitely one that won't boost an overall account that much, but if you got a bunch of evil, chaotic servants on your side, he might be able to do some things. Voyager is a pretty good AoE quick looper that has a little bit of team synergy as well, being able to apply crit damage and crit absorption to your allies. But overall, I wouldn't say he's as good as Edmund Dantes, but he's a nice little side grade. When it comes to the white extra servants, I would say it's a rank in terms of value. If I were to say the low point for any of them, it's probably Domon and Voyager. Not that they're bad, just that there are better alternatives, and one of them is very situational. And that's all the guaranteed SSR servants for New Year's. Honestly, as I said before, if you're skipping to the very end, I definitely recommend the Red Cavalry 1 the most, for the fact that Castoria is there, Da Vinci is there, Cama's there, Musashi Berserker is there, and the lowest you can get is probably Semiramis. So that gets my highest recommendation. But as I said, go with your heart more than going with chasing the meta / power. And that's the end of this video. This took me a long time to make. So I would really appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe. Leave some feedback on how I did this. There's no way I'm going to replicate this for the anniversary guaranteed SSR. I will definitely have to improve my summary game here. And what did you think overall in the video? I know I stumbled a lot, but I was really trying to get this out before New Year's came, because that's what you guys voted on my community pool. Probably the next video I'll be doing is of Muramasa, and I may even be rolling for him the night this video goes live, assuming that it does upload today. It's like 7 a.m. when I finish this recording. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye!